Let's start our first morning panel. Ms. McKenzie Richards will be our moderator. Ms. Richards is a policy associate at Pacific Research Institute, where she researches and writes on issues pertaining to health care policy and education reform.
Excellent. Well, thank you everyone for being here today. As Wenyan said, my name is McKenzie Richards. I'm a policy associate at the Pacific Research Institute. And the topic for our first panel today is rescuing K-12 from a critical race to the bottom. So despite ranking near the top in education spending, California ranks near the bottom in educational outcomes. Former Senator Romero covered, those statistics very well. And rather than focusing on educational outcomes, our state officials compound the problem by lowering graduation standards to pass-fail, discouraging homework, and removing advanced math classes, all in the name of equity and critical race theory. So to discuss the topic today, we have Elana Fishbein. She's the founder and president of No Left Turn in Education, and it is a national grassroots movement. Elana is a stay-at-home mother of 3 boys from the suburbs of Philadelphia, and witnessed with great concern the rapid radicalization of the curriculum in her children's school and was attacked for expressing objection. Realizing the danger embedded in such a shift in education, in the late summer of 2020, she launched the movement No Left Turn in Education, the first national grassroots movement of common sense people from all backgrounds to address this crisis. Dr. Fishbein holds a doctorate in social work from the University of Pennsylvania, a master's from Rutgers University, and bachelor's degrees from Hebrew University in Jerusalem in social work. She specialized in child welfare and child abuse and neglect. Her early training was in clinical social work, and as she advanced in her career, she focused on planning, policy, management, and research. Dr. Fishbein grew up in Israel and served in the Israel Defense Forces. Honorable Mary Barke was first elected to the Orange County Board of Education in 2018. She was just re-elected in June of 2022. She ran for office so that more children in Orange County would have the educational choices and opportunities that her own children enjoyed. Mary is a huge advocate for students and parental rights. She and her 5-0 board stand up against CRT, over-sexualization of children, and always put the parents and students first. Mary also works with the California Policy Center on their parent union, CLEO, California local elected officials, and Janus projects, and serves as the director of their CLEO project. And finally, she is a proud member of the advisory committee for CFER, Californians for Equal Rights Foundation. And then finally on our panel is Dr. Lance Izumi, my dear colleague at the Pacific Research Institute, and he is the Senior Director of the Center for Education at our institution. He has written books and studies on a wide variety of education topics. His most recent book is The Homeschool Boom.
Like Gloria said, available on Amazon.
He's an excellent writer. So he served 2 terms as president of the Board of Governors of the California Community Colleges. He also served as a commissioner on the California Post-Secondary Education Commission. He is a member of the U.S. Civil Rights Commission's California Advisory Board and director of writing and research for California Governor George Jukumajan. Yeah, before my time. So
Way before you.
Yeah.
Way before you.
Okay.
I used to make jokes about the Duke, but now I have to gauge my audience.
So we'll start with our first question I have for Lance. Could you delve a little deeper and explain California Ethnic Studies curriculum and also a little bit about AB 101?
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you very much, McKenzie, for your introductions, and I want to thank everybody here for taking out your Saturday on a holiday weekend to be with us. I want to thank, first of all, before I get into the substance of that question, I want to thank Wen Yoon and Frank and CFER for inviting all of us here today. They rolled out the red carpet for all the speakers, so we really appreciate it, and thanks for putting on a great conference. I'd like to say also, too, for Gail Harriott, great member of the board here for CFER, and also a friend of mine. I had a chapter in her book, Dubious Expediency, so another reason to buy Gail's book. I have a chapter in there on how race preferences discriminate against Asian Americans in higher education, which actually looks at the Harvard and Yale cases, which will be discussed later today. Gail also happened to mention something about intersectionality. I would like to also mention that now I'm of Japanese descent, but I got married in a castle 25 miles south of Edinburgh in a kilt. So I'm Japanese, but I, through intersectionality, self-identify as a Scotsman. Zeb Werman knows me well. So anyway, but with all that, let me get to the meat of this question, okay? About ethnic studies. So what are we talking about here in ethnic studies in California? So if you just look at the innocuous definition of ethnic studies that the California Department of Education puts out, they define it as an interdisciplinary study of race, ethnicity, indigeneity, with an emphasis on the experiences of people of color in the United States. Which again, sounds very innocuous, right? I mean, I think most people would probably support that, right? But everything is in the detail, right? And so this is why we get to this issue about ethnic studies and how it was implemented, how it's going to be implemented here. So there's actually two tracks that we need to look at in California. The first track is the legislative track, where a bill was just enacted that required that there be a ethnic studies high school course as a requirement for graduation. So one semester course, and you have to take that ethnic studies class in order to graduate. That was AB 101. That was signed by Governor Newsom last year. Interestingly enough, the year before, there was another bill authored by the same state assemblyman named Jose Medina, called AB 331, which had the exact same provision, but the governor vetoed it. So why did Newsom veto something in 2020, but then sign it in 2021? Well, that brings us to the parallel track about ethnic studies as a requirement. It's the model curriculum. What are we going to teach in these classes? And so, parallel to the legislative procedures, the State Department of Education had put together a committee, a task force to put together a draft of a model ethnic studies curriculum. And this whole effort started in 2019. And so I'd like to, so this group, and we can talk about later in the Q&A about who was on this group, but these, the folks who were on this group were very far left. And they produced a first draft that was, I mean, just basically outrageous. And I'd like to give kudos right here to my good friend Bill Evers, who's in several rows back there, because Bill Evers was one of the first people to really highlight what was in that first draft. Bill wrote a really influential article, and if you haven't read it, I mean, you should read it. It was in the Wall Street Journal. It's called "California Wants to Teach Your Kids That Capitalism is Racist." And so what Bill did in that article, and cataloged the many far left ideological positions that the first draft took was not only that capitalism is a system of power and oppression, but it also lumped it with patriarchy, racism, white supremacy, and ableism. So, and Bill also, found that if you looked at who are the individuals that are highlighted in the first draft, there were people like Angela Davis, who, for those of you old enough, you may recall her, but for those who not, Angela Davis is a radical. She had been the vice presidential nominee of the Communist Party of the United States, and yet she was highlighted and teachers were encouraged to highlight her in this model curriculum. Another person that was highlighted, Oscar Lopez Rivera, member of a terrorist group that carried out 130 bomb attacks. So, in addition to the catalog that Bill put together in the Wall Street Journal, the Jewish groups around the state also became incensed over what was contained in this first draft of this model ethnic studies curriculum. The group AMCHA Initiative, which documents anti-Semitic activities, put together a coalition of 74 organizations that opposed the first draft. Well, why did they oppose this draft? Well, among the reasons was because the draft promoted the principles of BDS, which is boycott Israel, divest from companies that are doing business in key areas with Israel, and sanction Israel.
Lance, is it okay if we have Elana?
Oh yeah, sure. We can.
No, just to, because I know that she has a lot of, just with the BDS. And
Yeah, absolutely.
Elaborate on that.
I would just go.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Because I'm giving you a broad overview, and
All right.
I leave it to experts like Elana to go into a little bit more detail. But some of the other things that are contained in this first draft was that they referred to the founding of Israel as using the term Nakba, which means catastrophe.
That's right.
And there was a poem included in the first draft that demonized Jews based upon their perceived control of the media in the United States. And so, because of all of this, even the author of that bill, remember, the AB 331 and AB 101, Jose Medina, even he came out against the first draft because he said that this draft would end up discriminating against Jewish people. So eventually, because of this massive pushback, and this is one of the things we're here on this panel talking about how all of you can have impact. Well, because of this grassroots uprising against this first draft, the State Department of Education and the State Board of Education had to pull back and send the State Department back to the drawing board and come up with a new draft. Well, they came up with a new draft, and they shaved off some of the rough political corners from this, the first draft. And for example, they took out capitalism and they put in exploitive economic systems or something to that effect, but we all know what we're talking about when we say that, right? And so, Bill and Wen Yuan and CFER, they can all tell you about how the current second draft of this ethnic studies curriculum is still very troubling. But the bottom line, though, for all of us here in the grassroots, on the front lines, wherever you're from, is the fact that all this dancing around at the state level doesn't really matter, because the local school districts basically still have the autonomy to actually choose whichever curriculum they want. Now, they could choose the rounded off version that the state has now put forward and has been approved by the State Board of Education, but they could also implement the first version, the ultra-radical version, right? And interestingly enough, the people who crafted the first version, who were very upset that that they were asked to round off these edges, they are still pushing that first version. And if you look at who's supporting that, the first version, who's supporting it? Well, it's like the 800-pound gorilla here in California, the California Teachers Association. They're supporting it. And it's interesting that as AB 101, the high school graduation ethnic studies requirement, was going through the legislature, the CTA was supporting AB 101, even though they had already come out and said that they supported the first draft and actually encouraged their members to visit a website called liberatedethnicstudies.org, which is basically, you know, all the radical stuff from the first version. And, you know, the first version is now known, you know, amongst all of us who are doing work in it as liberated ethnic studies. And actually, Wen Yuan is one of the experts on this whole issue, and we have a book coming out very soon on critical race theory in the classroom. And Wen Yuan and McKenzie and I are co-authors on this book. And Wen Yuan has a great opening chapter that looks at this issue of liberated ethnic studies curriculum. So I would advise you.
But one of the reasons that I launched the movement is because I felt that how gradually our curriculum, our kids' curriculum, become politicized. And that's what they're doing with the ethnic studies, with this pro-Palestinian BDS element of the curriculum. It's politicizing the curriculum. You have your political opinion, that's fine. You can, you know, pursue them. You can, promote them in whatever capacity. Don't brainwash our kids into your personal political opinion. So that's exactly what's happening with that element in the ethnic studies curriculum. And I think this is very wrong in any kind of setting, workplace or otherwise, but definitely when you have a captured audience, actually they are completely captured in the school for all those hours, and you are indoctrinating them into your own world views, into your own politics, it's a big no-no. I wanted to just kind of broaden a little bit and give you some maybe examples from what's happening in other states to make you understand that this is really not only a California problem, although I know and I'm sure that you've seen some videos of parents in different states that are rising up and objecting to that. By the way, I just want to tell you, I'm from Montgomery County, and I even can guess from what school district might be my school district that the Courageous family is from. And today I think things are different, but it's still problematic. New Jersey, I got a phone call from a mother. In fact, our chapter leader in New Jersey referred her to me. That was in January 21. And the mother had a son in Princeton High School, and he was a junior high. And she called me because he was the captain of the track team. They're a white family. And the principal told her that her son will not be able to continue to be the captain of the track team because he has to take a CRT class. And she did not want him to take a CRT class. She wanted him to opt out of that class. That was, as I said, January 21. And I was very curious because I was wondering if this is kind of a requirement, like they're making it an ethnic study requirement here. And she said what the superintendent in charge of curriculum told her, the vice superintendent told her that in fact that's going to be a requirement in New Jersey in order to graduate. I know that it's not yet, but when I Googled, I found out that 2 years ago they had a petition online where they were asking people to support ethnic studies curriculum as a requirement for graduation in New Jersey. So this is just an example of another state. From North Carolina chapter, my chapter leader found out through FOIA's request that there is going to be a training for teachers who are teaching 3 to 5 years old in a preschool of CRT. All the kids are actually special ed kids. So she dug up and she actually through FOIA collected something like 7,000 papers, documents, and she was plowing through them. a very meticulous physician that she is, who quit her job as a physician and she's homeschooling her kids, and she became our chapter leader there. We put the report, by the way, on our website, 203 pages report of all the documents she found out. And indeed, the state contracted with the University of North Carolina for over $7 million to provide teacher training on CRT for those teachers who are teaching 3 to 5-year-old, the preschoolers on CRT. Here's another example of North Carolina. So we're really getting examples from all over the country about CRT infiltrating the schools. I want to make a couple more points. When you mentioned quite at the beginning the people of color, I really think we need a definition of what people of color. Who are those people of color? I mean, I remember when I wrote my letter to our superintendent before I even thought about the movement, just being puzzled about the curriculum that they changed in our school. They call it cultural proficiency. And I asked them if all these cultural proficiencies are going to be required from all the students, and if there's going to be like a benchmark or some, when is a student going to be proficient in the cultural proficiency? Like we have a proficiency in math, in science, in English. When are you going to be a culturally proficient? And one of the question I also asked in my letter, and you can find it also on our website, is if there's going to be a test of the color of the pigmentation of your skin to determine if you're the one that you have enough of whatever pigmentation to need that kind of studies. And I'm saying that also because I'm Jewish, as you already know by now. My parents both came from Iraq, so I'm what they consider in the popular culture Sephardic Jew. My parents my ancestors were, expelled to Babylon how many thousand years ago, and my parents apparently never left. I mean, my ancestors are their ancestors never left Iraq. And from Iraq, there were refugees that came to Israel in January 51. They had to leave to survive, and they ended up in Israel. So I'm a Middle Eastern, all my life in Middle Eastern. The only difference, I'm Jew, and I'm not a Muslim. So because I'm Jewish and not a Muslim from the Middle East, I am all of a sudden a white person and a white privileged person. And so that's the whole definition, who are the people. It's the same thing, by the way, black people who do not support the worldview of BLM, they're actually not black. So basically the people, or whatever, I never came across that term until I, launched my movement. In fact, everybody who doesn't agree with the left or radical left opinion or with the BLM opinion, they're actually, not of that part of the group. So that's really the actual definition of who are the people who are part of the group or who are the people who are opposing the group. And it has nothing to do with the color of your skin. The same thing we know about Hispanic. Who are Hispanic, who are people of color, and who are Hispanic or not people of color. So those kind of things that we are letting the other side hijack the language, make the definition, put us in boxes, label us, and this is something that we cannot allow anybody to do. We have to abide by our principle of our Constitution and follow them. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you. That was very well worded. Before we move to Q&A, the title of this panel is Rescuing, of course. So I kind of wanted to see just if each of you could share some brief thoughts on what are solutions, like what are things that can be done at the local level. And we've touched on those, but if we could just reiterate those again from each of you, and then we'll move to Q&A from the audience.
Well, I'll try to be shorter than my first answer. But so in our book that McKenzie, Wen-Yuan, and myself have authored, which is coming out this fall, we interviewed, again, as I say, Elana, Mary, Emily Ortiz-Wickman, who I see there in the audience, former school board member in Oceanside, and then we interview a bunch of people, and we find out from them what are the things that people can actually do at the grassroots level. So we want this to be a very grassroots book that people can read and be able to then act upon. And really we found that there are 4 ways that parents and grassroots activists are using in order to battle CRT and all these related racial Marxist ideas. And these include what Elana is doing, organizing parents. There's no left turn in education. We interviewed for the book the founder of Moms for Liberty, Defending Justice. There's Parents Defending Education. There are a lot of national and regional groups that have now sprung up that are battling this plague that is infesting American schools. Also, too, I think you mentioned the Public Records Act. And so a lot of parents are starting to use the Public Records Act in order to find out what their schools are doing, because obviously they're not transparent, right? And so how do you force them to be transparent? And one of the people we interview is a woman named Nicole Solas, who is a parent in Rhode Island who used the Public Records Act, and for her trouble, she got sued by the teachers union because she was using the Public Records Act.
For $75,000.
Yes, yes. And so the Goldwater Institute, for those of you who want to do this and be courageous at your district level, the Goldwater Institute has put out this great publication called Open My Government, a citizen's guide to public records requests. And the representative of the Goldwater Institute was actually at a conference sponsored by Mary and her organization, California Local Elected Officials, up in Sacramento. It's a great publication, and so that is also running for school board, which we've heard about, and also the last thing is filing lawsuits. And so, one of the people that we interview for our book is a woman named Gabs Clark, who is a dirt poor mom, African American, living in a motel in Las Vegas.
Disabled too.
Disabled too,
Yeah.
that's right, disabled, that's right, thank you for reminding me. Yes, disabled as well. And with a 20-year-old car that is so dented up, she can't open the door. She has to actually climb in the top of the car in order to get into her car. And yet her son, who is biracial, because her father, the father is white, but who passed away when the son was extremely young, well, his son is viewed as being white by a charter school that did not...
My case, I brought this.
Yes, oh, okay, by the charter school that denied him a diploma because he refused to engage in a privilege exercise in a required class, and so the school failed him, refused to give him his diploma. She filed suit, and you can talk about this, but she filed suit in federal court.
Thank you.
If you want me to comment?
Yes, definitely.
In fact, this is on? Yeah, okay, good. Gabrielle approached me about a week after I was on Tucker, like a month after I launched the movement, and showed me all those documents. I looked at them, and she did not think about the lawsuit back then. She just did not know what to do. She was trying to approach a lot of people, and nobody took it seriously. After speaking with her for about a couple of weeks or so, I felt this is a strong case. I have no experience. I just launched the movement, but common sense, we need to use a lot of our common sense. We lost it a long time ago, it looks like, looking at common sense. And I had a lawyer from New York that also approached me shortly after I launched the movement and just volunteered to work with me. And after talking to both of them, I put them together. And indeed, she's a biracial mother. She lived back then in Nevada, had 5 kids. Her first husband was black, and the 2 older kids, boys, were dark complexion. And then she got divorced, married a white man, and the kids, the second 2 boys were with fair complexion, they're actually blonde and green eyes. And her husband passed away when her son was actually a year old. And then when he was a senior in school, in a charter school in Nevada, he was forced to take a class called Sociology of Change. And she realized, was homeschooling, so she realized what he's learning, looking over his shoulder. That's when she said, it's absolutely not. And in fact, the child himself did not feel comfortable participating, coming from a biracial family. So the mother, after I put them together with the lawyer, it was quite a process, because we are now at a very different place. Back then, we could not find a lawyer in Nevada to represent them. Lawyers were afraid that it's going to be hurtful to their practice to take a case like that. It took a long time because the lawyer from New York was not licensed to practice in Nevada. Eventually, we did find a lawyer in Nevada, and we filed a lawsuit that was December 22nd, 2020. I remember it very well because I was involved in every step of the case. And the lawsuit is still in federal court.
Thank you. And Mary? Sure. I'll just quickly talk about the resources the California Policy Center provides through CLEO, the project that I direct. It's a free membership-based project. It's free to join. We have 1,200 plus members. And what we recently did because of this parent revolution is we put together a candidate academy. So anybody who a month or two ago was thinking about running or who's now decided to run can take it for free. Our website for that is electeds.org. With the code CPC-free, and if anybody wants it after, I can give it to them. You can go on and get the training for free. There's basically 8 sessions. Most of them are just informal discussions between Lance Christensen and myself. That name may be familiar. He's my colleague at California Policy Center, running for State Superintendent of Public Instruction. He could really change the culture of education here in Orange County, so I'm excited. So we put together these informal videos, and we also did a printable version of a handbook, a candidate's handbook, which takes down the 100-plus page that you get from the registrar of voters when you sign up to run to about 30 pages. So we always encourage people to print that. It is self-paced. We've also done a number of virtual and in-person training for people that are running for office. We are a 501c3, so there's certain things we can't do, but we can certainly advise them of their duties and how to run for office. Something else that we have done is we also have a parent union, and I believe Rebecca is here today. I'm not sure if she's in the room right now. There she is in the back. Rebecca is the director of our parent union, and that project of CPC really helps parents, and they help them guide through this process, whether they're going to run for office or they're just going to go to board meetings and speak. If you go on parentunion.org, you'll find an amazing toolkit for parents on how to do things from setting up a rally to writing an op-ed to preparing comments. So that's another great tool. So those are the two main tools that I wanted to mention. Something else that I'll mention is at the County Board of Education, we have defunded now both National School Board Association and California School Board Association. So NSBA. We did NSBA before it was in fashion. We did that 2 years ago before the letter to Merrick Garland, but just at our meeting last month, we also defunded CSBA. We know that these two organizations do not protect children or parents, and we are not going to spend our dollars with them. And we hope that at some point in the near future, California Policy Center will come up with something to replace them. So that's my final comments, and thank you.
I just want to say one thing that, about Mary, that for those of you who are thinking about running for school board and want to know once you get elected, what are you going to do once you do get elected, right? I think you should look at what Mary Barke's done. In my book, one of the things I highlight in her chapter is the fact that the Orange County Board of Education put together a forum on critical race theory. And they brought in experts from all around the country, including Wayne Yuan, to speak about it and to analyze it, and brought in the community to talk about it. So, when we talk about, well, we know what's going on. We know that there's bad stuff going on. What are you going to do? And I think one of the things you can do is to inform the public, right? But how do you inform the public? Well, you do the kinds of things that Mary did in putting together this innovative forum, over the objections of like the bureaucracy in her district and all that, and then to inform the community that came out in droves in order to voice their concerns about what they're seeing with their kids. And I I remember one of the people that attended your forum was also a Japanese American who said that, what's going on? Because I'm Japanese, you know, and I came to this country for the opportunity, and what I see going on in the schools is something that is undercutting those opportunities. And so I think that's where you get to hear people, you know, who are not part of the education deep state elite. And you get to have all those average members of the community be able to speak their minds. I want to congratulate Mary for being able to put together things like that.
Well, thank you, Lance. And you know, that's really a great ending because not only did Wendy attend, but she actually orchestrated both of those expert forums, as we call them. She helped us invite the guests. She used a favor with James Lindsay to get him to attend. So she did an amazing job with both those forums. So a big kudos to Wendy and CFER. And that
I think we have time for about maybe one or two questions from the audience. I don't know if there's a microphone.
Can I comment about the
Sure, yes, that's fine.
what to do? As I want to describe what we do to fight it, I want to go a little bit just to understand when we talk about CRT, because it relates directly to how we act. We are really looking at the broad definition of CRT as actually BLM wrote it in the 13 principles. And when you read the 13 principle, you realize, and you look at the history of how CRT evolved from the 60s through the 89, when they came officially with the term CRT, with Kimberly Crenshaw and the intersectionality, when then it was just race and gender. And today we are dealing with all the other characteristic or attribute of CRT. So all of them actually are this encompasses in the term CRT. When you look at the sexuality of the sexualizing our children, when you're looking at the treating kids by race, etc. So CRT is now not only relating to people on the basis of their color or ethnicity, but it encompasses also the sexualizing of our kids. Therefore, when we are devising our methods of intervention, we start by the most important thing that you mentioned last, educating. We will be surprised because we live in a bubble. In the bubble we live, we all know everything about the matter. And we read more, we explore more. Most people in America still don't know about this. Every day I'm surprised to get more and more messages from people that are surprised to find it in their kids' curriculum, that are surprised to hear it in the newspaper, to read about it in a newspaper. So we have to make sure that we are bringing the message to more people. That's why I think we don't see yet the kind of transformation that you expect to see. That's why still not enough people going and voting in school board election. We are focusing a lot on bringing the message to a wider audience. That's why when we are talking about what we are doing, we're not focusing on left and right. We're not focusing on politics at all. We are focusing on right and wrong. And that's what I said from the get-go when I launched the movement, and I never heard about CRT before, never heard about all this at all. But I knew when I looked at what my kids were learning, I knew what's right and what's wrong. And that's how we communicate it to the parents. That's how we bring it. Put aside politics. Don't address politics because it's not a political issue. It's not about Democrat and Republican or independent. It's really about what's right to educate our kids and what's wrong to bring it to them from K to 12. So exposing, as we said, we file a lot of under FOIA, under Freedom of Information Act, in all the states. We expose as much information, and then the next step is, and it's not as easy to bring it out to the open. Unlike I feel many times on the media, the mainstream media, we don't have the kind of platform on our side of the media that give enough stage to expose the material. We're doing better, but we know from the amount of information that we are uncovering, we need still bigger microphone and bigger stage to share with people. The more people know about this, the more they are willing to be engaged and devote time. So educating and exploring. Another thing that we are starting to pay a lot of attention to, which is very critical at this stage, and now we are 2 years into the movement, building alternatives. So people are leaving schools, yeah, we got the information from 2020 to 21. The statistics talk about over 2 million people, children left public schools. And the NEA talked recently about over 30,000 teachers left teaching. So we're getting more people leaving the educator as well as children leaving those settings, the traditional settings. But as you pointed also rightfully so, most private school, as most charter school, most alternative school are very woke as well. So I remember at the beginning of the movement, our, people making comments, get your kids out of public school, put them in private schools, not knowing that most private schools were actually the leaders in the indoctrination process. And in fact, one of the mother from Episcopalian school told me, they are targeting elite private schools because they know that those kids that are graduating elite private schools eventually will go to those Ivy League schools and to the top schools, and they are the future leaders of our country. And they are targeting them early on and grooming them early on in all this indoctrination. The other things that we are doing very forcefully is working on 3 areas. Lawsuits. Gabrielle Clark was the first one, and it was very hard to bring to court. Now we have lawyers lining up to take cases. That's what 2 years did. I've been working with several law firms, all of them pro bono, from Alliance Defending Freedom to Liberty Justice Center to South Liberal Foundation. I mean, there are really a lot of bodies that are willing to take cases now. Actually, they are looking. I got an email just a few days ago from one of the big lawyer firms telling me, I'm looking for cases in Texas, in Texas and Arizona, and I forgot the third state, Florida, CRT cases, only CRT cases. So they are looking for lawsuits, and we are doing that. I referred at least 40 cases to different law firms. The other things that we are working very hard on is legislation. Our organization drafted the first I don't want to call it CRT, but that's how people refer to it many times, anti-CRT bill. Our volunteers go to legislators, schedule meeting with governor, meeting with attorney general. We do that regularly in negotiating bills on transparency, on parental rights. So this is very important effort to do it on the legislature. And obviously school board. One of the things that you mentioned at the end also in terms of training. There's a new organization that started just a few months ago that is focused only on training after you're elected to school board. What do you do? Because we know in the reality, once people are elected to school board, they really don't know what to do. And the superintendent is the one that is really calling the shots. And I have enough people who are president of school board, vice president, who have been telling us how the really game is played behind the curtains. So this is very important that once they get elected, they know what to do. So now they're also working on that. And developing as an alternative to the current schools, the current school system. And this is something that we have been starting working on, bringing teachers together, the ones that are leaving the schools, the ones that are left the schools, and we are starting working on models of micro schools. So we'll provide alternative for kids outside of the traditional possibility that exists already.
Thank you. I think we no longer have time for questions. I'm so sorry. However, our 3 excellent panelists will be around, and so you can ask them your questions, face to face. But thank you so much.
I want to say, let's give a round of applause to McKenzie Richards. The first time moderating a panel, and she had to moderate this herd of cats.
It's a very good experience.
So anyway,